Good evening. Welcome to the next Community Conversations from Community Solutions Consulting. I'm AJ Davis, and I have with me here today Miss Courtney Waters, candidate for Charleston County District, District 4, North Charleston. Courtney, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, all right. Well, you are a little under a week away from this very, very interesting race. So tell us a little bit about why you chose to run for the school board this
Yeah. So, education is my passion. It has been my passion since college. And I decided to run after being tapped several times and told I should get involved in a deeper level, aside from just volunteering on other folks' campaigns and advising others. I think I realized that this was a good moment for me because I had gathered the teaching experience and I'd seen education from the business side, investing in schools from that perspective. But then my work in the last 2.5 years has really given me an opportunity to see policy and understand how things happen and just how our kids, African American kids, Black kids, whatever terminology you want to use, consistently get the short end of the stick. And then so many things that have happened socially just made me realize, what people are actually listening to people of color about what might help the situations of people of color. And so I said, you know what? Folks are always asking qualified people to run and getting a no. And so I said, maybe I'll step up this time and try to do something different.
year. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you. And you are running in District 4, which is North Charleston. Tell us some of the things you've learned about that area.
It's interesting. North Charleston, although I've lived in North Charleston for 6 years, I'm not originally from Charleston. It really reminds me a lot of where I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee. I know what it's like to watch a city grow up around you and you be shut out of participation in it. Home prices are soaring. The education system in all of the suburban areas are growing and doing well, and then you're completely shut out. What I know about North Charleston is that there are people who are here who have right to be here, who have contributed to the community, who work, who live, who grow, who raise families here, and they're not being served, not just by the school system, but by so many of the systems that are here.
And in your time looking at North Charleston's schools, what have you determined to be some of the biggest issues you would tackle as a board
So, it's interesting because the biggest issue I see is one that I actually keep questioning just how I'm going to be able to tackle as a board member. I really think that the biggest issue that exists in education, period, is the fact that we're not acknowledging and addressing the fact that the system was never created to effectively educate Black children. It was not created that way, and this is not a I got you or an attack on anyone in particular, but we have to realize that when schools were integrated, forced integration had happened. All the Black schools closed, Black teachers got laid off, and students of color went into schools that weren't built for them. Their parents weren't there. The communities weren't brought along with them. Policies weren't set to undergird equity, to create equity situations. And so, I think that the thing that's going to fix it is really addressing the systemic inequities and really the racial I don't want to say racism because I know that's an inflammatory term, but really the racial aspect of education. The piece that says, when I stand in front of you, do I have high expectations of you because you're a person, because you're a child that came here as a blank slate, or do I put a cap on how much you can do? And at the end of the day, I think people have to realize that to fix the system, some folks who have been historically given a lot are going to have to give something up. And that's usually where the conversation stops. When you realize, okay, in order to give kids access to seats at some of the top schools, that means the culture might change. That means we might have to set some new policies. That means there may be fewer seats for some. You know what I'm saying? And it's one of those things where it's like, if we don't acknowledge that, it doesn't matter how many smart people come up with this solution and that solution is not going to be fixed. It's not going to change.
That's a very interesting explanation. And it kind of segues into the other thing. You have the unique, I guess you'd say, responsibility, if you will, if you are elected, of also coming into inheriting a district that has the highest performing school and the lowest performing schools with such a broad disparity. And as you just said, that may mean a different approach to how we, seat children. what are some of the things that you think that you would personally have to do working with your fellow board members to kind of close that gap that you see? Of course, I'm talking about academic magnet and SOA compared to some of the poorer schools in the southern end of North Charleston, like your Shakoras and whatnot. So,
Yeah. I think it's figuring out how to get the brightest teachers back into the schools that are in North Charleston that are failing. And not to say that the teachers who are there aren't bright, but I will say that teachers who are extremely skilled automatically are going to want to go to wherever they can go. That's the best opportunity for them. And then, we sort of, have what's left to go into other schools. And I'm not saying that to say that teachers in those buildings aren't capable, but we need a mix where you have diversity in thought and in ability. You get more learning even among the staff. We're adults, but we haven't finished learning. We could learn some of those different tactics and strategies for educating students. But then here's the other thing. I think it really has a lot to do with the supports that are at the school in terms of wraparound services, the after-school tutoring, opportunities for students to stay at school at a reduced cost so that parents can actually afford that type of thing. Because the other piece that people don't really talk about is when you get a student who comes to you, and I was a teacher, when a student comes to you already bright and already ready to learn, you don't have to do much. But when you get a student who is struggling in some ways, has other things to cope with inside of the school environment, you've got to be able to address those issues before you can ever get to the learning piece. And so I really do think that the wraparound services, those additional supports, I think school counseling staffs need to be way larger in schools that have more challenges, because you're going to have to be able to pull out and intervene with those kids. And it doesn't need to be SROs that are having those conversations. It doesn't need to be somebody yelling at them and telling them to straighten up and whatever, because I'm dealing with so much. You can't tell me, to just suck it up as a kid, and deal. I mean, shoot, as adults, it's hard to do.
right. And again, great segue into the other conversation. You mentioned wraparound services in the age of COVID, which has also shown the country and the world probably just how vulnerable
Yeah.
a lot of our systems are. And nowhere is this more evident than the education system. But we also know that when it comes down to educational funding and spending, a lot of times schools seem to not prioritize
Mhm.
the wraparound services that you're talking about. Do you see that as something that you will champion as a board member?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so much more important now in the age of COVID, because now the school has entered folks' homes. And there we do a lot of joking about it, right? I see a lot of social media jokes where folks walk in the background and something maybe inappropriate is going on, but it's really not funny. We got to think about the toll that that's taken on a child. And so I think now, if there ever was a time, now is the time to be partnering with a DSS or whatever other entities there are that are supposed to be responsible for helping kids get access to additional services. We need to be doing that. And I want to champion that, not just because it's COVID. We always needed to be doing that. I was a kid who was a recipient of, we were on the angel tree. Well, y'all don't have Macy's here. Macy's has this
But we
angel
do,
tree.
but we have an angel tree.
Oh,
It's
you
not
do?
through Macy's, but
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
we do have angel trees.
Yeah, but I was one of those students. I needed after school, I needed the benefit of all the programs I could be doing, because my mother had 2 jobs and there were 5 of us. And so if whatever I could get access to that was free, that was productive, I needed to be doing it. And there's nothing wrong with providing that type of service. And I think what happens is we get so bogged down in what the day to day requires that we think we don't have the time or the resources left. But I think if there is no other situation that's shown us just how critical it is, how many kids are getting left behind, it's COVID, and it's now that we got to figure out how to bring these things into the budget and to a priority in the conversation.
Okay. Another great segue. You mentioned as a former teacher and understanding the level of I guess support many of these students need. I think COVID has also exposed how our educators and educational staff members also need to be supported. So tell us a little bit about what your approach as a board member would be in supporting our staff and our teachers.
Yeah, well, one, I'm definitely going to advocate for higher pay. I have friends who are teaching now who call me like, do you know they gave us a $500 check or, whatever it was. And I was like, whoa, 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 like, what? You don't even know what to say because it is so terrible. And it is a slap in the face. So it's hard to even respond. right, in a constructive way. But I certainly want to advocate for higher pay. I certainly want to advocate for broader support staffs in schools so that teachers can actually get the help that they need, whether it's dealing with students who need something right away, not just misbehavior. Like sometimes you just need another person in the room with you. I mean, when you have a class of 30 people, 30 students, and everybody has a need, and you've got people on this level and that level and that level, you need some additional help. And so I understand the impediment, the financial impediment to getting to a two-teacher model. But what about support staff that can help? Because it's not just teachers. Students need so much that additional adults, period, in the building can help. But then also, I think school leaders need to be freed up to actually support teachers the way that they need to be supported. I was having a conversation with a millennial teacher recently, and she was saying sometimes I just get so frustrated with my principal because I'm not getting the services that I need. And she was like, well, what advice would you give me for dealing with that? And I would say, be gracious with them because principals too, a lot of principals want to spend more time with teachers, but they have paperwork, they have to deal with disciplinary issues, they have to deal with this and this and so many things to where you don't get to really focus on grooming your staff. I think teachers need so much support, but they don't need it because we're providing bare bones. We're providing the classroom, a class set of books, or whatever, just to go deliver instruction and not taking care of teachers as people who need to be replenished and filled up as well and appropriately compensated.
Okay, okay. Again, great segue. Charleston County School District, as the second largest school district in the state of South Carolina, has somewhat of a very contentious image in the community. And
So I
for
learned.
yes, were you aware of that before you ran?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, and so, with that being said, and this year's race being so highly contested and highly watched, I think, as I said to you before we started recording, you guys are probably the most um, sought after and requested candidates so far. I mean, I know everybody else is out there, but as board members, you will also become kind of the public face of the district in a way, because as a public, we interface with you all because we're electing you. But the trust between the public, the community, and the district is definitely not there.
No.
As a board member, what, if any, do you see as your responsibility to kind of repair that?
I think it would be totally my responsibility. For one, the board is representing people. And so, one of the things that's upsetting in all of government across the nation is that people look at government officials as like the experts. And government officials are not the experts. They're not the people in the room who know the most. They are people in the room who have perspective because, of course, given documents or if elected, would be given documents and whatever to make decisions. But there are people who are dealing with this system every single day. And so I think, one, keeping the lines of communication open. I think, if I'm representing North Charleston needs to see, I need to be having conversations with folks that live and work in North Charleston. And one of the things I was told by one of my friends who is a government official is that you're going to spend money of your own. He was like, you're going to spend money of your own trying to reach people because you're going to want people to stay abreast. And really just, folks, I've had folks leaning into me trying to really prepare me for what it takes. But I expect to really represent the voices of people. And you can't represent the voices of people if you don't folks and understand what it is that they need. And so I think it's 100% the responsibility of any board member to be in touch with people.
Here is a question for you in your educator teacher hat.
Yes, sir.
So much of how people view education nowadays is viewed through the lens of good school, bad school.
Mm-hmm.
And that's usually based upon what test scores or school report cards are made available. And as such, it has caused a rift in terms of communities, parents, and whatnot. So one of the things that keeps coming up is the validity of such a heavy reliance on standardized testing. Um, Again, as a board member, you have a limited capacity, but what are your views on using standardized testing and report cards as the sole indicators of whether we have good schools, bad schools?
Well, I mean, I think it's a tragedy. I mean, for one, you just miss so many opportunities. People express themselves different ways. We have different learning styles, and a paper test just cannot measure all of those different learning styles. Um, you know, I don't know how we get away from it because these are federal guidelines, and we know they came, over a decade ago. They got much more stringent over a decade ago. And I think, this is where my heart goes out to teachers because I taught a feeder subject. I taught ninth grade English in Mississippi. The state test year was 10th grade. So our homework was to go home and write questions that looked like the state test so that we could use them. And at least for about 15 minutes a day, we had to work with students and teach them how to answer these questions. And it was so heartbreaking to me because, when I was in high school, I took AP English. So we got to read. I went to a public school, majority black school, but I was, one of the top students. And so I got to go to AP. But we read books and we wrote essays and we really got to talk and we got to have discussion. What I was teaching kids was, how to get around this question, how to dissect this question and get to the right answer. That is not a life skill. And it's not the kind of thing that's going to encourage, learning. And so I'm a huge proponent of flexibility within the curriculum. I think as you got to teach students how to take tests, but I think as much as you can get around that, you have to. And I will just admit, I'm at a loss for exactly how you do that because you have a finite amount of time, so you have so much you want to do as a teacher.
I think it's important that you, as a board candidate and potential board member, also explain that it is a federal regulation
Absolutely.
that governs that. And so, as a board member, there's a limited
Yeah,
amount of reach you can have with it.
extremely.
All right. So we're going to turn for a little bit. As I said, this race has been one of the most contentious local races of any kind I can think in probably the last 10 years. One of the things that has come out of this race is the emergence of the Coalition for Kids,
Mm-hmm.
once again in the school board race. But I think, unfortunately, one of the tactics they took in terms of marketing you, because you were part of that slate,
Yeah.
was to run what would be considered an attack ad. In transparency, you and I know each other, were familiar before you ran, and we had conversations. And I think that, unfortunately, what is a very rigorous and very insightful campaign on the part of yourself and your colleagues has been overshadowed by what people feel about that organization. So I just want you to speak to that.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that, and you and I talked about this before I read it, because I said, well, I'm gonna fill out the candidate questionnaire, and you were like, all right, and I'm not sure. And there could have been, for me, what I saw, or what I see is an organization that does care about what happens in schools, and I think some of the tactics are what have been just ones that I don't agree with. I didn't see the ad on television. Actually, the first time I learned about it, I think Eric was like, what is it? And I was like, I honestly have no idea. And contrary to what people, the misgiving that people have, I didn't sign off on or know about the ads that were running. And I don't agree with them. I truly don't. And I was shocked. I really was. But I do think that it has overshadowed what is important. And one of the things that I can say, and I do say proudly, is that I've been endorsed by every other organization that asks us to submit candidate questionnaires. And I think that's important because that means that there are multiple organizations that have vetted me. And whatever their tactics are, they've been able to see that I'm an experienced, passionate, and qualified candidate. And then it's up to the voters to decide if they can trust that a person can go into the room, even though they've been endorsed by an organization, and speak truth, and operate of their own free will. What I can say today definitively is I have not signed a piece of paper. I have not agreed to. I do not support privatization. I taught in a public school. I attended a public school. Honestly, most of my beginning career was actually staying completely anti-charter, and it's because of how I was raised in the public school system. And when I say raised up, not just as a child, but just through my career. And then I slowly came around to the realization that it really doesn't matter whether it's private-public partnership or purely public school. It's about the people in that building and what attitudes they have about children. It's about districts and boards opening up money, opening up policies, or reviewing policy or reforming policy to suit the needs of all the students. I have no desire, no ulterior motive to go in and take schools from the community because the community fills those schools. And quite frankly, schools used to be epicenters of the community. And that's what I like to see. In Mississippi, in the Mississippi Delta where I taught, that's what it was. I mean, I remember actually putting on lock-ins for my students to come and spend the night. And all the girls got to come in the gym and do dance competitions and eat pizza, and the teachers slept in with them. That's the kind of environment that I like. That's why I did it.
Right.
And so I do hate that has happened because, again, I've been here 6 years. I know a lot of people. I don't know everybody. And so I do hate for my introduction to be overshadowed by that in a lot of ways, which is why I have appreciated the friends and mentors of mine who have stepped in and said, no, but, Courtney's actually experienced, and concerned. But, I just hope that in the end, if I am elected, folks give me the opportunity over the course of 2 years to really demonstrate what I'm about and not have somebody else speaking for me.
Gotcha. Well, thank you for your explanation. And as I said, I wanted your words to be the words that came out about that. And again, as I said, we had a conversation before this, and I'm saddened that that happened. But I think that you stand on your own, and I think all of you as candidates stand on your own when it comes to what you want to see and what you see yourselves doing. I want to get into the personal side of these political races,
Okay.
especially since you were front and center because of the campaign ads, but more importantly, what that may have done to you in an already stressful type situation. So, how are you doing as the person? Not Courtney the candidate, Courtney the mom.
You know what? I'm really ready for this to be over.
Okay.
One of the things that I have realized is that I've always known I'm kind of nonsense. But I like doing the work.
Okay.
This campaign stuff, I was like, this is not real. I don't enjoy this. I don't enjoy having to have so many conversations about stuff that just doesn't matter. I like to have conversations about kids. I like to have conversations about what is possible, what we can do. I don't do the mudslinging. I don't like feeling like, I can't say what I really think because somebody's waiting to pounce on it for a soundbite. This is a lot. This is a big undertaking. And the thing is, as a mother, I have to be ready for my daughter when she comes to me, or when I go to her. I'm going to get her. But when I go pick her up in the evening, it's time to have dinner. It's time to do bath. We got to read a book. I'm nursing her, so that's very intimate time, and my energy's got to be right because I'm giving my energy to her. And so really, I'm okay, but I've been there. It's a struggle to find the balance between just like shutting off. Okay, I'm not going to look at Facebook. I'm not going to answer phones because something negative might be coming. I'm just going to shut it down and I'm going to spend time with my baby. And then at the end of it all, I'm going to give myself some time because I got to get up and do this all over again. This is something. But one of the things people keep telling me is very few people have actually done this, and so I keep also reminding myself, Courtney, you got to actually be humble about it because you realize people's concerns are their concerns for you. No matter how it comes at you, people are concerned about the education system because it hasn't served them, and that's shame on the system, right? And so you can't get upset, but it is exhausting.
And next to last question. Mm-hmm. With that same thought in mind, if you could go back and give pre-campaign announcement, Courtney, one piece of advice, as you said, a few days before the election, what would it be?
Oh, goodness. I don't know. The advice I would have given, I don't know. I might have just run. I might have run on my own. I might have. The reason I have to say I might have is because full transparency. I actually don't believe that the goals of the coalition are nefarious. What I don't like though is that it could potentially cause me to miss an opportunity to really do some good. And so it's not. It might upset people, but I'm not going to bash the coalition because. And I was here in 2018 and I saw what happened. And before I put out the questionnaire, I had a conversation. I said, "What was that about?" And I got a response, and I said, "Okay, this is I can sit well with this. This sits well with me. I can move forward." But regardless of whether I truly believe that their intentions are nefarious, I wouldn't want anything to get in the way of me being able to make my impact.
Final question. What is the one thing you want to leave the people who will watch this video with to know about you as the candidate and the person?
You know, this is a passion for me. This isn't political games. I've been working in education, and I've said before, and I'll keep saying, I'm going to go on and continue working in education because this is what I love to do. I just want people to know that I am committed to being a servant of people. I don't think that I'm running because I got all the answers. I don't. But I do have a passion and I do have a desire to see people of color do better. I have a desire to see us stop being completely shut out of everything. We don't need to keep seeing cities leave us behind. And I would like to be a part of that solution from an education standpoint.
All right. Well, thank you. This has been the latest community conversation with Ms. Courtney Waters, candidate for District 4, City of North Charleston. Thank you, Courtney.
Thank you.